right, welcome back to the Druber Health Podcast. Today's episode is going to contain a bunch of information on cooking oils, specifically vegetable oils. Now, vegetable oils are everywhere, right? So if you take a look at a granola bar, your favorite crackers, chips, cereal, candy, it is almost certain that you will find some form of vegetable oil in the ingredient list. And just for the record, vegetable oils are bad. Vegetable oils are derived from certain grains, nuts, legumes, fruits, and vegetables. So, seed oils now specifically refer to oils derived from seeds and can be any combination of the following. So, canola oil, which is really a form of a rapeseed plant, so rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, soybean oil, sesame seed oil, and grapeseed oil, cottonseed oil, etc. These oils contain high levels of omega-6 and omega-3 polyunsaturated fats and have a higher ratio of omega-6 fatty acids compared to omega-3. Sometimes that ratio can be as high as 15 to 1. And really, it's best to keep that ratio closer to 1 to 1. Also, during the process of creating seed oils, it is necessary to add chemicals to disinfect and alter the odor and color of them to make them consumable. And just because something is consumable does not mean that it should be consumed. So we're going to break down the seed oil refining process here real quick. So in order to make seed oils consumable, they have to go through an intensive refining process, and that means we can already declare seed oils like a very processed food. Now, the way in which they are refined include toxic and harmful substances. In order to extract the oil from these plants and seeds, it is common practice to soak them in a neurotoxic chemical called hexane. The U.S. considers it okay for small amounts of hexane to be found in our vegetable oils because the United States regulatory agencies follow a single-dose toxicity criteria. And that goes for basically any substance and chemical found in our food and water. Now, Japan and European countries, on the other hand, have more strict regulations and follow the cumulative dose toxicity standards for many of these things. And I find it completely mind-boggling that the U.S. regulatory organizations follow single-dose toxicity. Like, for example, they're really just only keeping track of how much is harmful to you in a single dose. But when we're looking at all of the foods and the water we're drinking, like, we're having much more than a single dose. And, a lot of times it's a continuous dose. We're having stuff every day, multiple times during the day. And really, yeah, it just makes sense to me to follow a cumulative dose since we're getting so much of this in. Like, for example, vegetable oils are extremely prevalent in our society, so shouldn't we account for vegetable oils being, consumed multiple times throughout the day, every single day? But that's not the case. So that's pretty unfortunate. Now, like I mentioned, vegetable oils are extremely prevalent in our society, and it is quite easy to find models tracking the increase in consumption over the decades. So throughout my research, I found that a lot of the safety standards regarding other harmful interactions are also based on limited exposure and not cumulative exposure. So we will definitely cover those things in the future episodes, but just wanted to touch base on that a little bit today. Anyway, I did pull up a chart showing the increase in worldwide vegetable oil consumption in million metric tons, and this covers basically around 2013 and 14 all the way to 2022-23. So the most prevalent oils right now are going to be palm oil and soybean oil. And if we look at the statistics for 2013-2014, palm oil, people were consuming 57.52 million metric tons of palm oil and 45.27 million metric tons of soybean oil. That's worldwide. Now, let's say we go all the way to 2022, 2023. Palm oil increased to 76.04 million metric tons, and soybean oil increased to 60.32 million metric tons. And that trend has been the same. Like, it's continued to move up over the decades, and we are consuming an incredible amount of these vegetable oils. The data from that chart was compiled by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and then USDA Foreign Agricultural Services. So knowing how much consumption has increased and how our bodies tend to struggle with removing toxins, it really is not surprising why vegetable oils are at the root of many health issues. And hexane isn't even the main issue with vegetable oils. So let's move forward into linoleic acid. So linoleic acid is an omega-6 chain fatty acid that is found in seed oils in large quantities. And not just seed oils, we'll say all vegetable oils. Now, it is a polyunsaturated fatty acid, so we call those PUFAs for short. That is not only inflammatory, but it's also a known metabolic disruptor. There is consistent evidence in studies on non-human animals showing the polyunsaturated intake leads to the use of these polyunsaturated fats in the construction of our cells, so specifically our mitochondria cells. If you do not have healthy mitochondria function, all other functional aspects of our bodies suffer. Now, I'm just going to give you guys a refresher from your biology class in high school. So mitochondria, those are organelles found inside a majority of our cells. Now, when we are metabolically healthy, we have an abundance of them inside each cell. Mitochondria are extremely important to our overall function, which is why it is unfortunate that they are especially susceptible to nutrient deficiencies, environmental toxins, and oxidative damage. So drugs that are common that damage mitochondria would be like acetaminophen, antibiotics, aspirin, AZT, which I believe is an AIDS, HIV drug. Cocaine is bad. Cocaine is bad. Endomethacin, methamphetamine. So ibuprofen and other NSAID drugs are bad. And then statins, which are used to control cholesterol, those are also really bad for us. Now, one of the main functions of our mitochondria is to produce ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, and it's the main energy source in which our cells use to function. So all sugars and carbohydrates must be converted into this usable form of energy. The best way to increase ATP production and efficiency is to avoid toxins, consume those vital nutrients, and exercise. Increased muscle mass is beneficial for ATP production. ATP is critical for muscle contractions, nerve impulse transmissions, and protein synthesis. A cool fact here is the brain actually uses 70% of our ATP that we produce, which it really helps explain the strong correlation between mitochondrial dysfunction and neurodegeneration. And that's referring to diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and other diseases like those. Going back to mitochondria, they have basically a lipid membrane. So lipid membrane means it's a fat-based membrane, so fatty acids, and there's a difference between fatty acid strength. So we're going to be talking about saturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids coming up here and how they affect the mitochondrial health. It is clearly visible that mitochondrial membranes made up of polyunsaturated fats actually leak protons because polyunsaturated fats form a weaker barrier than saturated fats and monounsaturated fats. So this means that the efficiency of ATP production takes a massive hit. And if we circle back to vegetable oils, we can be reminded that they contain a lot of polyunsaturated fats. And the overconsumption of these vegetable oils is causing our bodies to basically utilize more polyunsaturated fats than saturated fats in the repair and production of our cells. So what happens when your body is unable to utilize energy that we are consuming in the form of food? Our bodies hold on to it as fat. And this isn't the only factor in the proliferation of obesity, but it's a major player for sure. Now, understanding that, let's take a slight detour and talk about weight loss for a second here. So the notion that calories in and calories out is the most important weight loss factor is really just a surface level mask for a much deeper problem. Now, in order for your body to operate optimally, you should be consuming more healthy, nutritious fuel, not less. I will never ever advocate for calorie restriction because I've seen firsthand how devastating it can be to a person's overall health. And I just want everyone to be aware that when you are consuming healthy foods, calorie restriction is also nutrient restriction. And this is why weight loss at the expense of calorie restriction is often unsustainable for people. If someone has started their weight loss journey through controlling portion sizes, it is going to be critical for there to be definitely a shift in focus to healthy food consumption at some point. So getting rid of excess body fat is important for overall health, but it is important to do it in a way that does not deteriorate the health of our organ and metabolic systems. Now let's get back to linoleic acid here after that little detour. Now when the linoleic acid is exposed to high temperatures found when cooking, it breaks down. And in science terms, it oxidizes. So it releases free radical byproducts. Now free radicals in our bodies are not good. So the only radicals I want in my life are the new radicals and their 1998 hit, "You get what you give." Whatever linoleic acid is giving, I do not want any of it. So we're going to take a peek at a chart listing the linoleic acid levels in a variety of different seed oils. So the chart I have here is provided by Zero Acre company. So first chart is going to go over linoleic acid content of liquid oils. Now the worst offender is going to be grapeseed oil, and that's 71% concentration of linoleic acid. Sunflower is at 68, corn is 56, soybean oil is 55, cottonseed oil is 53, rice bran 30, peanut oil 30, canola oil 21, avocado oil typically around 13%, olive oil around 12%, palm oil is around 10%. And then if you compare to like butter and tallow, those are much lower. Those are going to be like closer to 1, if not 1. Next chart is going to go over susceptibility to oxidation. Now, basically, the higher amount of linoleic acid in the oil, the more susceptible it is to oxidation. So this chart here basically has a range from 1 to 9. 9 is going to be most oxidation, and then closer you get to 1 is the least. So basically it follows the same order as the last chart, grapeseed oil being the worst, all the way down to like avocado oil, olive oil, palm oil, that area. But then once we start getting lower, so I would say avocado oil is right around at like let's say 3.25 oxidation level. Duck fat, pig fat, which is lard, is all going to be right around that 3 level. And then if we wanted to get below 2, we're looking at ghee butter, regular butter, and then tallow. And then if we want to go even further, taking into account grass-fed cows, the ghee, butter, and tallow would all be lower than that. So definitely animal fats are going to be your safest option. Specifically, it's going to be that beef fat is going to be the one that you want to cook with. It's going to be the safest. We're also going to take a look here at the trend in dietary fat sources alongside obesity in the U.S. So basically this chart shows levels from 1960 to 2020. And what we're seeing is dairy consumption has stayed relatively the same. Same goes for, I would say, pork is about the same. Beef has decreased a little bit. And then animal fats have definitely decreased. They've dropped. However, from 1960 to 2020, we've seen a pretty vast increase in vegetable oil consumption. So we're looking at like a 30% increase just about. And that is basically along the same curve as the obesity trend. We're seeing vegetable oils and obesity climb almost at the same rate. Now, obviously, this is just a correlation, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. It's definitely not animal fats that are making us fatter as a society. That hasn't changed. I mean, that's gone down. Dairy has stayed the same. That's not the issue. We're looking at, obviously, there's other reasons too. We're taking into account other processed stuff, toxins or whatnot. But I would say vegetable oils are part of the problem, and we'll go more into that here. So let's put seed oil consumption into perspective a little bit more. So if you were to consume 5 to 10 tablespoons of sunflower oil in one day, That would be equivalent to eating roughly 2,800 sunflower seeds, which is a lot. I can't imagine just sitting and eating that many sunflower seeds. If you can, great, but I would not recommend it. If you were to consume the same amount of grapeseed oil in a given day, it would be equivalent to eating roughly 625 grapes to reach that same amount naturally. Unfortunately, linoleic acid accumulates in our bodies over time. So if you have spent an entire lifetime eating foods containing seed oils, vegetable oils, most likely your body is carrying accumulated linoleic acid, which ultimately puts more pressure on your metabolic health. However, if you can remove seed oils and vegetable oils from your diet, linoleic levels will drop naturally, which is great news. However, it does take a decent amount of time. So we're looking at anywhere from 2 to 4 years for there to be turnover as far as getting rid of the linoleic acid that was used to build up your cells. Now, vegetable and seed oils are contaminated with glyphosate if they're not organic. And we'll talk about glyphosate in a different episode, but just definitely keep tabs on that one. So common misconceptions with vegetable oil. So mainstream health claims seed oils to be heart healthy, and that's just not the case. So many people with heart issues are recommended to eat a diet high in seed oils in order to lower cholesterol levels. Now, cholesterol is an important building block and a transport molecule for hormone production. It's like a lipid protein, right? So it is essential to our metabolic health. And when our levels are lowered, it can lead to more health issues. So for decades, there's been a lot of disagreement on whether cholesterol is healthy or unhealthy. And I have been unable to find a study that proves anything other than a correlation between high cholesterol levels, specifically LDL, and heart cardiovascular issues. In fact, this correlation is more than likely pointing to the fact that high cholesterol is potentially a byproduct of your body overcompensating in order to improve poor metabolic health. So LDL can be separated into two separate categories. We have large buoyant LDL and small dense LDL. Now, large buoyant LDL is completely unrelated to heart disease, so there's no correlation there to atherosclerosis. Small dense LDL, on the other hand, is actually raised when we eat carbohydrates and sugars and is associated with heart disease and blocking of our arteries. So it is no surprise that a diet containing high amounts of carbs and sugars and low amounts of healthy fats and proteins will lead to cardiovascular issues and metabolic dysfunction. So for most clinics and companies, if we're looking for small, dense LDL levels, you're not really going to find those in common lab tests. So one of the closest links to that is going to be your triglyceride levels. It can be used as like a reference to potentially where your small, dense LDL levels are at. Now, on top of all that, there was a newly released study. It was called the Blood Biomarker Profiles and Exceptional Longevity. It's a comparison of centenarians and non-centenarians in a 35-year follow-up of a Swedish AMORIS cohort. So this took multiple rounds of blood samples from over 44,000 participants between the ages of 65 and 100, and concluded that healthy to high levels of total cholesterol and iron. Now, we're going to take a side note on iron. Iron needs to be balanced out by magnesium levels. Otherwise, if your iron levels are too high in comparison to your magnesium, that can lead to some issues. But overall, higher levels of cholesterol and higher levels of iron increased one's odds of living to 100. So, you heard that right. Higher cholesterol levels increase your longevity. Meanwhile, over the past 30 years, mainstream medicine has been trying to drop our total cholesterol levels, which is mind-boggling. It's sad and unfortunate, and it seems to be very slow for mainstream medicine to move past that. Plus, people have been told that for years and years and years, and it's just kind of become ingrained in people's heads. So this is one of those things that's going to take a long time to change our view on. So if you can't cook with vegetable oil, what should you use? The answer is simply that you would do your cooking with organic, grass-fed, grass-finished beef tallow. That's like your best option. Or any type of rendered fat from an organic ruminant animal is going to be a pretty solid option. Now, tallow is going to have much higher percentages of healthy saturated fats and will actually contain nutrients, whereas vegetable oils contain very, very, very minimal amount of nutrients. So if you're cooking at lower temperatures or baking, I recommend using organic grass-fed butter. That's pretty easy to find. It's creamy, it's delicious, and a much healthier option than dumping vegetable oil into your baking mix. If you use a pork fat to cook, it is important to understand the diets of the pigs. So it is common for pigs to consume a diet of corn and grains. Even if they are organic corn and grains, it's going to have a higher percentage of linoleic acid in their fat. So sometimes that percentage of linoleic acid level can be just as high as like certain oils. So it can be similar to avocado or olive oils if that pig is consuming corn and grain. Same issue can be found for chicken fat. And even if you can't find a beef tallow that meets all the criteria of organic, grass-fed, grass-finished, whatever, it's still going to be better than cooking with other fat alternatives and oils for sure. If you are using avocado or olive oil, it's better than any other vegetable and seed oils, but still definitely has a percentage of linoleic acid like we discussed earlier. Now, I typically don't include as much avocado oil in my diet anymore. When I first started my health journey, I definitely made the switch to avocado oil, and that was a learning process as well. If you are consuming avocado oil, you want to make sure you're consuming it from a dark glass container. That way you can avoid plastic contamination. And then the darker the container, the less chance it has of oxidizing in the container. Now, the brand Chosen Foods basically sells a top-of-the-line avocado oil. That's the one that I was purchasing. And they have other avocado oil products like mayo and ranch dressing, and I currently use both of those options. Now, other companies like Kraft will sell a mayo that's touted to have, it has avocado oil or olive oil, but if you look at the back, it's just a very small amount, and a majority of the oil makeup is going to be like soybean oil or sunflower oil or something like that. So really, it's just a marketing tease. They're not doing a whole lot to include healthier fats. So it's really important that you take a full look at the ingredient list and not just what it says on the label, because they are going to fool you. Now, for me, going back to the mayo and ranch dressing that Chosen Food sells, they recently changed their ranch recipe, which I was a little disappointed in because I really like the flavor of the older recipe. But I was able to find a fix to the flavor issue for myself. So basically what I did is I have Chosen Foods mayo and Chosen Foods ranch, and I combine them together in a 1-to-1 ratio, and that just makes it a lot creamier, and the flavor was definitely much, much closer to how the old recipe was. So definitely appreciated that little fix. So if you are a fan of mayo or ranch, definitely look into those. For me, it's an absolutely delicious complement to wings, burgers, pizza, and veggies. The brand Siete currently sells an organic avocado oil corn tortilla chip. I believe it's called Maize Topopos, something like that. Topopos. I did find a brand online called Masa that sells organic corn tortilla chips made with grass-fed beef tallow. So that's pretty awesome. Now, the drawback to that is their chips are quite a bit more expensive than Siete brand chips, and I personally don't like or consume enough chips to justify spending that kind of money on them. But if you like chips and you want to continue including them in your diet, that's going to be a pretty positive option for you. If you're looking for a liquid oil to continue cooking with, I have good news for you. There is an alternative to the traditional stuff, and it's by a company called Zero Acre Farms. So they have a cultured oil, and this cultured oil has a 1% linoleic acid content. and has an almost net zero environmental footprint. So 0 Acre Farms fermentation process means that the cultured oil has 90% lower environmental footprint than the average vegetable oil. Additionally, the company claims it can produce the same amount of oil 50 times faster and with 86% less emissions than soybean oil. And soybean oil and palm oil are the most prevalent oils in production right now. So it also uses 99% less water than olive oil and 85% less land use than canola oil. Now, I personally prefer beef tallow and grass-fed butter, but if those don't suit you as much, making the switch to 0 Acre cultured oil is going to be a very positive change. Now, some restaurants are actually starting to make the switch from regular vegetable oils to 0 Acres cultured oil. So there's a hamburger fast food chain on the west side of the United States that is now making the move to 0 Acre cultured oil, which is awesome. I know there's a few just restaurants around the country that are cooking their stuff in beef tallow, which is amazing. Could definitely use more of that. And Chipotle actually is an investor in this 0 Acre company. So at some point, they'll be making the switch to cultured oil as well. So some positive changes there. Looking forward to some healthier, just like restaurant options. I think that'll be pretty cool. So that was an overview on vegetable oils. And if you take away one thing from today, hopefully it's that vegetable oils are bad. And I mean, we can't take a lot of this information that's out there at face value. It's important to do our own digging and make sure you look at the ingredient lists because companies will try to fool you. If you have any specific questions on other healthier options as far as like different foods, brands, let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. We can definitely include those in the next podcast as well as we go deeper into what to look out for in our foods. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And don't forget to vote on what you would like to see in the next episode. And I really appreciate feedback. So if you want to reach out to me after listening to an episode, I love to hear that from you guys. I love to hear what you're doing. Or if you have any more questions, like I said, I'm an open book. So that being said, keep on making those changes to your nutritional and dietary habits, everyone, and we will see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Druber Health Podcast.